know that we are doing, we're kind of finishing up our series of trainings for parents. This was sponsored by the Office of the State Superintendent. We are thrilled to have been able to partner with OSSE and also with parents to make sure that we can share the information that is needed to ensure that our students with disabilities have everything they need in place in order to be successful. So that being said, I'm going to switch this over to Molly, and she is going to be our lead presenter today. We're going to keep everyone on mute because it just reduces the background noise, but please feel free to use your chat box or the question box. I'll be monitoring that throughout the broadcast and helping Molly to answer the questions as they come in. So that being said, thank you so much, Molly, for being with us.
Thanks, Julie. Hopefully everyone can hear me. You should see on your screen now a slide, the title slide, being a positive, proactive advocate for your child. If you can't, please type a message in the box where it says type message here, and Julie will be able to alert me that there might be a problem with that. I'm really excited that we could, at AJE, partner with the co-op on this project because it is very parent-centric. I am a parent myself of 2 children with autism, and both children went through early intervention here in Washington, D.C., as well as getting their IEPs here in D.C. and going through various school pieces. So I've learned the hard way how to be an advocate for my child. And I've also learned the hard way that how important it is to be a positive and proactive advocate for my children, which can sometimes be very hard, as we parents know. But I have learned, my motto is you get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. So a lot of what we will talk about here is those pieces on how to keep things positive and keep things moving forward and keeping the eye on the star of all of this, which is the child. I wanted to share this first slide because this is actually what the U.S. Department of Education says about special education. Their statement is that special education is of extreme importance because it ensures access to our public education system. So our government feels that this is a vital, vital piece of education, and it's for every child. They've also stated that parental engagement and involvement is critical to student success. You will never find a study out there that doesn't say the more involved a parent is in his or her student's education, the higher the likelihood of that student having the most productive future and the most success in education. So parents of students in special education are simply critical. Today we're going to talk a little bit about what advocacy means and how you can improve your advocacy skills, and also how you can use these skills to support your child at whatever age. This isn't just for the young students, it's also how to support middle school students, high school students, and beyond. So I'm going to skip this because I understand there is a video issue when I share, but I will be happy to shoot you out of YouTube, but it's basically a video from the movie, and I'm completely blanking, Pursuit of Happiness. But there's some terrific advocacy examples in there about how we talk up. So advocates speak up for themselves and make things better. And a lot of parents that we work with say they just are too shy or too quiet or don't know education enough to be an advocate. But we like to turn around and ask them, have you ever met with your child's teacher about any issue? Have you ever spoke to a group? Have you ever spoken at work about an issue? Have you ever even told a cashier that an item was not charged correctly? If you answer yes to any of those, you've been advocating and you speak up for yourself. This quote is really wonderful, especially when we're thinking about our students with disabilities. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. And as parents, we are sometimes fearful in speaking up for our children in an education system when we aren't educators ourselves or have the background or have legal advice. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know. But the most important thing that I'm going to share with parents, and you'll hear me say this over and over again, is you have to ask questions. It's okay to ask questions, and frequently you need to stop and say, I don't know this, or I want to know more about this, or, you know, just you have the right to ask questions. So you as a parent know when something isn't working. Your experiences are valuable because you've been with the child the most, and you have ideas on how to make things better because oftentimes you know what helps the child and what doesn't help your child. And really, the parent or guardian in a child's life is the only person who has the only long-term connection to the child. You are going to be there for the child's life. And regardless of how many teachers and professionals and advisors and related therapists and everybody else coming in and out, you are that long-term connection. So you have to speak up for your child. We're going to talk about 6 skills. Understanding your child's disability, and this may also understanding your child's learning needs and how they learn. Know the key players. It's also, I always talk about, it's not just important to know who your child's teacher is, but who the administrators are, who if they get related services or therapy. I also say it's great to know the teachers, the other adults in the building. One of my sons had the most amazing connection with the school security guard, and she was really his guardian angel for 2 years that he was at that school. And she was a key player for me because she really looked out for my son. Know your rights and responsibilities, and there's both, there's rights and responsibilities. Learn to become well organized, which is a challenge for many of us, but the one thing you will have when you have a child in special education is a lot of paperwork. Use clear and effective communication. And number 6 is really hard, but I've often told parents, no matter what a great school or teacher or anybody else you're with, you are inevitably going to have disagreements and real hurdles at times in working with your school and your school staff about your child. And you have to learn how to get through those so that we can get that piece. So that's what we'll be looking at today. I like to ask, who is the star? And if I had you in a room, I would be saying, of course the star is our child. And oftentimes adults get in the way of the focus on the star, who is the child. You want to know who the players are, again, getting back into who's on your child's team, who are the related service folks, who are the decision makers in your child's school. You want to know what the games are. You need to know about the timelines for an IEP and when you have meetings and all of those pieces. If you are having a meeting coming up, you need to think of what your plan of action is. Think about what you want to see your child doing that school year. Or if there's a concern, what would be the solution to that concern? If you have a child that is having a hard time navigating the morning space at a school, getting into the building, and transitions are hard, what is success to you? Think about that. You want to be able to say, I want my child to be able to get into the building without a meltdown or having a happy moment. What does that look like? And if you share that with the school staff, then the school staff can say, well, instead of having the child coming in with everybody else where it might be too much commotion, why don't we plan for that child to come in 2 minutes different from everybody else, so they have a little bit more quiet space in the coat closet and every place else. And then, of course, when do you think about what you're talking about or when it's your turn. Understanding your child's disability helps you know which services are appropriate for your child. Not all children with disabilities are going to have speech therapy. Some may have physical therapy. My children never had physical therapy, so I don't know much about physical therapy, but I do know a lot about speech therapy. Having high expectations. In our city especially, I think we have done not such a great job with our students with disabilities because we've lowered a lot of expectations. But we absolutely know that research shows us that the high majority, close to 99% of students, can have high expectations in school, can access general education curriculum, and can be successful. Find the right technology and accommodations. and learn to use your resources. And it might not just be within your school, but it's with organizations like AJE and the co-op and a lot of other groups that are part of the educational model here in the city. I think it's always important when we're looking at working on a problem with or an issue with a student in an IEP or talking about meetings is knowing who the director or decision maker is, because sometimes the teacher can't make certain decisions. If your child needs an instructional aid, if your child needs an assistive technology that has to be bought, like a keyboard or Dragon text-to or speech-to-text piece, who can make that decision for the school? Who can actually buy it? So you need to know that. Are the staff people, you know, a part of the public education system, or in other ways different employees? Some schools in our city use contract therapists. So the speech therapist is not a school employee, but actually someone who's working with several different schools. So it's important to know that. And even the basic, how can you find a person's name and you know who it is? I have a child that frequently will tell me about a teacher, Mr. So-and-so, and I'm not sure who Mr. So-and-so is. So I have to, you know, find out from the rest of the staff or go on to the school website, and it might be a PE teacher I didn't realize he was working with. Know your rights and responsibilities. In the District of Columbia, every meeting you will have with an IEP, you will be getting your the procedural rights for parents. I often joke that I've gotten so many copies of those, I can wallpaper my bathroom with them. But you need to take a look at those and see what your rights and responsibilities are. You can find them on the OSSE website at any time. You want to ask about the laws and policies that are, you know, following your child. Asking questions, join groups. There's many different support groups that you can join. Get on the email roster of organizations like AJE and the co-op and OSSE to find out what the latest information about services and supports are. For one example, there's an upcoming parent summit that OSSE is sponsoring on, if I look at my calendar, October 22nd. So go to things like that where you can get other information about parent engagement. And this, if I was co-presenting with a school, I find that this is the part where the school staff is always nodding along. They really feel that they want to be partners with the parents in your child's education. And you need to look at the professionals and the teachers in the building as partners. It is not one above the other. It's important to work together. It's important to share goals and share information. When your child, especially if you have a child with a disability who may not relate, you know, well, or, you know, talk well or speak or be able to, you know, effectively tell what's going on in their day, it's important for you as a parent to share information with the school. Even as little things like, my child had a really bad night's sleep today and is really dragging, or my child, I think, is coming down with a cold and isn't feeling himself. Anxieties. My child had a lot of anxiety about school today and I'm not sure what's going on. Teachers love more information. They will see, sometimes our students will react in a certain way and we're not sure what's going on. And if parents and teachers can share information to kind of fix or look at that puzzle that is a child. It's important to share authority. Our students really watch how parents and teachers and school staff interact. And if they see you both as a team, or all of you as a team, they will understand the authority in the classroom and in the school and at home are all together and all part. Understand the different skills and experiences that the school staff are bringing. I remember one time I was working with a really wonderful principal at my daughter's school, but she didn't have a lot of experience with autism, and she didn't have, early childhood was not her strongest skill. And it was important for her, and she was wonderful about this, saying, I would like more information about this. Where would you suggest I go? How can we make sure that we're bringing those skills and experiences to the table? And then, as I said, you need to go into it knowing that there's always going to be a problem at some point. So if you all have the attitude about solving it together for the star, going back to who our star is, and that's our child. Becoming well organized. As I said, even parents of students who are in general education can drown in paperwork from school. It's important. Some special education parents will set up a file system or set up a notebook. There's certain things that you should always keep, like copies of IEP and copies of notices. But it's also great to talk to the school staff and be a partner and say, what are some of these things that we really do need to keep for the year, and what don't we need to keep? I always suggest that whenever you have conversations with the school about your child's education, and you do it maybe during arrival or dismissal or on the playground, to put it in writing, even if it's your own notes. I spoke to this teacher this morning about my concern with something going on. Keep a phone log. If you call the school, just keep a little spiral notebook that you can have a list of when you're reaching out. And certainly have one meeting notebook or a folder where you can put your notes from the meeting. I one time had a parent say, gosh, I hope this doesn't keep going. I have my child with an IEP, but I have so many meetings. And I had to look at him in the eye and say, I hate to tell you, but you're going to have a lot of meetings if you have a child with an IEP. So it's important to realize that you're going to have to keep those pieces organized. And also it helps you to be able to keep working with the school and keep them abreast as well too with that. So try whatever organization method works well for you. Certainly use clear and effective communication. As I said, adults get in the way often of a communication around our child. We want to keep our eye on the prize, thinking about the right services and the right supports for our children. Listen and certainly get back to that about asking questions. I am not an educator. I don't have a background in education in any way, and many of the first meetings I was having about my child were utilizing terms I really didn't know, and I didn't stop and ask questions enough because I honestly didn't want to embarrass myself. And I realize now that I should have, because I had a long learning curve with that. It is absolutely okay for parents to stop in a meeting and go, I don't know what the term, you talked about a certain speech term, or you were talking about IEP and an MDT and an SST, and I don't know what those mean. It's a great reminder to school staff to slow down and not use acronyms. Everybody kind of slides into it because there's a lot of those pieces around special education. But if you remind that, it's really important. The other piece that I'd like to do around keeping the eye on the prize for the child is I often tell my favorite story of one of my first IEP meetings at a school when my oldest, was a pre-Ker. And he hadn't attended that school yet. We were enrolling him, and we were having the first IEP meeting. And the special ed coordinator said in front of everybody, and of course this was a typical IEP meeting for a rather complicated kid, of myself and about professionals around a table in the library. And the special ed coordinator said, can I have a picture of your son, Molly? And I said, well, sure. And I was a little taken aback. And of course, not being organized, I had to kind of go through my wallet and find a picture of my son and gave it. And I didn't know what she wanted it for. I thought maybe it was for a record or something. And she said, I'd like to pass this around and have everybody look at it. And then we're going to put this picture in the middle of the table for the meeting, because I want everybody at this table to remember that this meeting is about this little boy. And I've told this story a lot because it was this little piece that we said, you know what, we're all going to keep our eye on the prize, and in the middle of the table was a picture of my son. And it helped us think that no matter where we go with the personalities at the table and the different, what my desires might not match what the school's desires are, but we're still trying to work towards one goal of working, for the students. I already talked about this, the focus on the needs of the child and problem solve and find solutions together. Speaking clearly. Sometimes you won't understand or know some of the terms, so it's okay as a parent to say, I don't know where this falls in his education, but I'm really concerned about this one particular area. Help me understand what's going here. It's all the basics, of course, in communication. Avoid making people feel defensive. We want to turn negatives into positives. I will also say I have cried many a time at an IEP meeting. It's not uncommon to have for me to make sure there's a box of Kleenex at the table. And if there's any educators on this call today, I always want to say that you've got to remember when a parent walks into an IEP meeting, they are looking at a document that could be anywhere from 20 to 50 pages long. And it's really a piece that we need to think about, that if you really look hard at an IEP and you think about my child there, it's about that child's deficits. It's about what that child can't do. And that can be really hard on a parent, and it really can be kind of difficult lump to get through. So whenever we can turn the negatives into positives, it's key. Another tip that a terrific related service provider used to do is always start off with a positive about the student, what you are seeing that's positive. It goes such a long way for parents to know that there's at least something in my child that you as an educator and a professional see and really like and really want to focus on. And so, taking on to that focus. Again, focus on the goal. Sometimes you're having meetings about attendance or just making a decision about ESY, summer extended school year. You might be having it for a reevaluation. It's important to keep your conversation on the goals of that meeting, and if there are other things coming, to let the staff know, and you might need to schedule a second meeting. Show respect and expect it from others. Manage your emotions. As I said, it's not always easy. I've often cried in IEP meetings, sometimes for joy or sometimes for happiness. Ask questions, rephrase, and I can't say this enough. It gets back to my more flies with honey. Say thank you. We are all a team working to help a child who has deficits reach their highest level of potential. And I'm so grateful to the team and the educators who are trying to work with our child. And I also feel that goes the other way, that schools need to be grateful to parents for being at IEP meetings, for being a part of the and being willing to work together on this. If you ever have to do written communication to the school, I always suggest these are about letters, but we can also say the same thing about emails. It be sent to a person who can make the change. If you are reaching out to a teacher who may not have the authority to do what you want, you need to think about including the principal or their director, and sometimes even going up to the head of school or the head of the school system. Make sure you put dates on it. I always suggest too, and I think schools have gotten these, and I know parents have written these things at like midnight, you need to focus on one or two issues in a particular letter or an email. Writing a laundry list of concerns or problems or something that happened 5 months ago is never going to help you get communication through. One of my favorite quotes about communication is, it doesn't matter what you say, it matters what they hear. And no one, not even the best of teachers, can go through a laundry list of a letter from a parent and be able to do anything with it or be able to summarize it. So focus on your one or two hot issues. Try not to do longer than one page. And the other piece I often suggest, and absolutely an email, make sure you set a deadline if you want to reply. Oftentimes I hear from parents, well, I emailed the principal, but she never got back with me. Or I sent a letter to so-and-so, but I haven't heard. And they fail to put a date in there, and it certainly can't be the next day, so we have to be realistic. But if you really want a reply, it's really, really helpful for you to say, I would like to have a response from you from a week from today, on Thursday, or whatever the time that you need, so that you really have it very clear in writing what your expectation is. Certainly give your contact information, your availability. It is absolutely okay to put in, I'm better on email, or I'm better at this phone number, or you can't call me during work, so it's got to be 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the morning, or 5 to 6 p.m. as parents. Before I get into when you disagree, what I'd love to kind of go back to is also on the communication, and I probably failed to pick it up, is thinking about the timing of your communication. Oftentimes, it's easy to do the positive communication at arrival, at dismissal, or during those times, but if there's an issue that is coming up and you need to have a little bit more involved communication, one of the worst possible times for you to do that to a teacher is at dismissal, when there are multiple students running around and other parents or other teachers. And yet we as parents, especially with students with special needs, we sometimes think, oh, we've got to get it all out right there. And it never works well. It's a time that's too hectic. You don't have time to be able to come to solutions, and you will never be happy with what happens. I often say, take a breath, tell the teacher that you're going to send an email or a call or send a note in the backpack the next day, and ask for a meeting, and schedule that at a time that's mutually beneficial and with timely, but also isn't going to be at a time where the teacher can't give you his or her full focus. So getting into when you disagree, as I said, it's absolutely positive that you will have disagreements with your school and work. You can disagree without being disagreeable. I often say we focus on the problem and the issue, but not the person. You try to take out the personal side of it. We've all worked with teachers that I've absolutely adored and felt I was on the same page with. I've also worked with teachers that I absolutely didn't adore and felt I was not on the same page with. But you can never go down, it never works to go down the path of being negative or harsh to the person. Apologize if needed. We teach our children this. We should do this as adults. Again, separate the person from the problem. We all have to realize, too, that our schools do not have the answers. They don't have all the answers. They have some, but they don't have all the answers. Sometimes problems can be a little big, and we all have to figure out what's the best case scenario, if not the perfect case scenario. Make sure you focus on your facts. I will tell you that young children often don't get things clear, so it's important when we're thinking about things and we're hearing from our students to say to the teachers or the folks, this is what my child said, and I'm very concerned, but I really want to get all the facts from you as well. And of course, choose all your battles. Your child is going to need to have as positive experience in education as possible, and everything is not always going to be right, but we're aiming for everything trying to be right most of the time, and so we really do need to choose those battles. When we talk about resolving disagreements, it's very tempting to want to throw out things like, well, we're just going to, take the school to court, or we're going to go up the line, or we're going to file a complaint. And there's always space for that. That might be needed at some point. But there's also a lot of ways to resolve disagreements by going informally and talking to people first. Oftentimes we don't realize that there might be some flexibility within the school or the principal if we lay out what the disagreement is or what the issue, and really want to find a solution. As parents, we have to have that attitude. It can't just be about finding blame or finding problems. We have to be thinking about what could a possible solution be, and fight for that, and make sure that it's fair to your student and to the school and the system. Certainly, there are formal process. There's mediation in our Office of Dispute Resolution here in D.C. You can always file a formal state complaint, and then there's also an appeals process. I am not an expert in those, but I will tell you that all of that information is available on the OSSE website, and you can find that. They also have staff that are able to answer questions. And again, also the folks here at my colleagues here at Advocates for Justice in Education can also help you, walk you through the process of what your rights are. It's very hard for me to ask you these questions since I am on the webinar, but I invite you, as we're kind of finishing up on some of this, to please If you have a question, to type it into the box, and we will be happy to kind of go over it and answer it. And as you're thinking about this, I want to read our last quote is, "I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. I will not refuse to do the something that I can do." And oftentimes we as parents of students with disabilities can be struggling with what their potential is and where their struggles are. And we have to look at the school process and working with the school team as a marathon, not a sprint. I think back to when my children are now 17 and 14, and I think back to when they were 3 and 5 and in the early stages of school, and those were really hard. Sometimes it was even hard to get through a full day for my children, and to get into the building without a meltdown and to work. But they have all grown, and they've all been educated, and they are all continuing to be educated. Learn to take a timeline a little differently for my children and think about it as a long process with that. And I also realized that my children honestly did do better when the adults in the room were able to communicate and work and be proactive together. And when I took a proactive stance within the school and made it be known that I was my child's advocate, and I was there to protect them and to love them and to have authority with them and be part of that IEP team. We always talk, the folks that are in the business of special education, as one of the most important members, if not the most important member of the IEP team is the parent. And I will also say that when your child gets older, the most important member of the IEP team is your child, because your child should start being part of that IEP process too. Children do see what their parents do, and I'm very hopeful that the more I advocate for my child and my children, that they're going to learn that they need to advocate for themselves as well, that it's a model that we show them of how to speak up for themselves, because we know that students with disabilities do better when they're able to talk about their disability, they're able to talk about their needs, what it takes for them to succeed, what kind of learning environment works best for them, and that they can take an active part of their education process. Julie, I'm going to ask at this point, do we have any questions?
Hi, Molly. At this point, we don't have any questions, but please do, folks, if you have a question, you can either type it into the question box, or there's a little hand icon that you can click on, and that will indicate that you're raising your hand, and then we can take you off of mute so you can ask your question if you'd prefer to do it that way.
As folks are thinking about that, you should see on my slide, this is a great opportunity to talk, as we spoke about OSSE as supporting these trainings. And OSSE, under the regulations of the U.S. Department of Education, must conduct an annual parent survey of parents who have students receiving special education services in the previous school year. And right now we're undergoing the process for the parent survey. You can do it online, and the email address that I've shown on the screen right now is the actual SurveyMonkey survey. All parents who had a student in special education or receiving services last year should have also gotten one in the mail, and that would have come sometime in mid-August. The current deadline for responding to this survey is December 5th. So we're really doing a push on this. We invite you to, I think we might be able to, when we send you a follow-up to this conference or to the webinar, be able to send you this link. But we'd really encourage it, if you know other parents, to send this link out to them as well. We traditionally in the city get a low response to this survey, and it's really important for us to be able to have a higher number, to be able to show what's really going on in the city around parent engagement, and to make sure that we're able to work with parents on this. So if you all who are listening can help us put this survey out, it would be really terrific. All of us involved in this are anxious to get more parents responding. I also need to state it is absolutely confidential. You do not need to provide your name or your child's school or any of those details. It will absolutely not be able to be traced back to you, so you can do it very honestly.
Thanks, Molly. So I'm looking, and it's a quiet group. There are no questions coming in and no hands raised, but I think that's really because you did such a wonderful, thorough job. So I just want to acknowledge that this was a great session, so well delivered, and let folks know that we will be posting the link to this recording on our website. We'll also share it with AJE and with OSSE. So if you have friends that weren't able to attend, they can look out for the link and listen at their convenience. So if there are no questions, I think we will we'll conclude the broadcast at this point. And I want to thank you all so much for spending part of your afternoon with us. And thank you, Molly.
Thank you all. And I put the Advocates for Justice and Education slide up. If anybody would like to call me offline, that phone number is my phone number with extension 206. And I'd be happy to continue to talk about parent advocacy.
Great. Thanks again, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.